Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a case from just after World War One, a file nearly a century old. It starts with a really tragic shooting in rural Missouri.
Yeah, and it ends quite dramatically with a conviction that hinges on a pretty stunning betrayal in court.
We're focusing on the 1919 murder of Henry Moore. He was a young railroad agent working for the Burlington Line at Armour Junction.
Hmm.
And what makes this story, I think, so compelling isn't just the crime itself, but, well, the incredibly messy path to justice. It took 2 whole years.
It did, and that path was just littered with red herrings, witnesses literally running away.
Right. And then a verdict that came back, well, astonishingly fast. We'll get to that.
It's a case that really captures some of the chaos and maybe the anxieties of that post-war period. Henry Moore himself, he was only 24.
Just a kid, really.
Basically, yeah. And what's particularly heartbreaking, as you mentioned to BWI,
Yeah.
he was a veteran, just returned from service overseas in France.
Although he didn't actually see frontline combat, right, the timing.
Correct. The armistice was signed just before his company got to the firing line. So he survives military service, comes home, gets his old job back.
He was planning his wedding.
Exactly. Engaged to be married soon. And then he's shot in the very early hours of April 22nd, 1919. Just devastating.
So our mission today really is to unpack the sources chronologically. But we need to be critical, look at how the supposed motive shifted, the legal games played.
And ultimately, how they secured that life sentence.
Yeah, and what does that whole 2-year saga ending in that super fast verdict tell us about, the community's need for justice, maybe closure at that time?
It's a great question. So let's start at the beginning. The crime scene.
Okay, Armored Junction Depot, middle of the night.
Yeah, between 1:30 and 2:00 a.m. Inside the telegraph room, you've got Moore, the night operator, and another worker, Bill Willis. He was the coal heaver, handled the water tank.
Right, and then two men approached. It all happened very fast, very violently. What do the sources say about those moments just before the shot?
Well, the initial reports were chaotic. They suggested two figures, one trying to force his way in, another outside a window.
And there was that early unfounded rumor.
Yes, tragically. And it's important to address this up front. Early reports, reflecting the prejudices of the time, mentioned a colored man trying to force a door and a white burglar outside.
But that was proven wrong later.
Completely wrong. Sources later confirmed the rumor about a black accomplice was, quote, entirely groundless. But it shows you the kind of flawed assumptions the police were operating under back then.
A sign of how they were scrambling for any kind of lead, maybe?
Possibly. So what actually happened? The man outside the south window shouts, "Stick out the money, boys!"
Okay, standard hold-up demand.
Right. Meanwhile, the other guy is apparently trying to force the door between the waiting room and the telegraph office, where Moore and Willis are.
And Willis reacts.
Instantly, he grabs a pump gun they had there and fires right through the door at the intruder. Probably hit him.
And then,
A split second later, the man outside, the one described as the white burglar, fires through that open window.
and hits more.
Yeah. Moore was apparently trying to turn out a lantern, so his back was partly turned. The shot hit him in the back, near his left hip.
And it was a terrible wound.
Devastating.
Yeah.
The bullet went through his bladder, perforated his bowels multiple times. Just awful.
Yeah, he was conscious when they got him in the ambulance.
Remarkably, yes.
Yeah.
Conscious enough to actually prepare his parents.
Oh,
He told them calmly, he knew he was dying, gave them instructions about his life insurance.
God, that's heartbreaking.
It really is. He held on for 2 days, but died on April 24th in the hospital in Atchison.
And the robbery itself, it was pointless.
Utterly. There was only about $25 in the depot. They didn't even take it.
They just fled.
Yep. Fled on foot, stole 2 horses from a nearby farm, Charles Fiddler's place, then ditched the horses near DeKalb, stole a Dodge car, and headed off toward St. Joseph.
And the local posse?
Formed immediately. Farmers and locals, but nothing. The trail went cold almost instantly.
So, a botched robbery, a tragic death, and the investigation starts off on the wrong foot with those initial rumors, and then nothing.
Exactly. A complete dead end, initially.
But then, just a few weeks later, in early May, the investigation takes this bizarre turn.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really strange for a bit. The police suddenly arrest a young farmer from a place called Ayaton T.B. Saunders.
And they drop the robbery motive.
Completely. For a couple of days, anyway. They suddenly decide or announce that this wasn't a robbery gone wrong. No.
What then?
They floated this theory that Moore was shot because of a rivalry over an Ayaton girl.
A love triangle. Seriously,
Yeah.
that seems completely out of left field.
It was total deflection.
Yeah.
Classic red herring stuff, probably born out of desperation because they had no real leads on the robbery.
And did it stick?
Not for long. It fell apart almost immediately. Just 2 days later, Saunders is released. Poof. The theory vanishes.
So they're forced to go back to the original idea, robbery.
Yep, back to square one, essentially. It just highlights how much pressure they were under.
Yeah.
A returning soldier murdered, a high-profile case, and they were flailing.
Okay, so the love triangle theory dies. When do the real suspects finally emerge?
It takes until about mid-May. Things finally start to solidify. The police arrest a guy named Vern Irvin.
Vern Irvin. Who was he?
He was 27 from Brookfield.
Yeah.
Importantly, he was a former Burlington Railroad brakeman, knew the railways.
Ah, okay. A connection.
Right. And after some intense questioning, the papers called it being sweated. Irvin cracks.
He confesses.
He confesses to being present at Armour Junction that night, but he says he wasn't alone. He names 2 others,
Okay, who?
Henry McDaniel and Herb Crawford. McDaniel, according to the police, already had a long criminal record and significantly was also a former Burlington employee, a section foreman.
Another railroad connection. And Crawford.
Less detail initially on Crawford, but he was named as the 3rd man. Suddenly, McDaniel and Crawford are fugitives. There's a $600 reward out for them.
So Irvin talks. But what's his initial story? He wasn't the shooter, presumably.
Oh, definitely not, according to him. His first statement, this purported confession, is very carefully worded. He claims he was standing about 20 feet away from the depot.
Conveniently distant.
Exactly. He says he hears a shot, hears glass break. Then he sees one man back out of the door. Later, this unnamed man supposedly says he had to shoot.
He doesn't initially say who shot more.
Not explicitly in that first report, seems focused on minimizing his own role. He even claims he went back to try and help Moore after the others fled, but then got scared he'd be blamed, so he ran too.
Sounds like he's already angling for a deal, trying to paint himself as just caught up in it.
Precisely. Setting himself up as maybe just an accessory, not the main perpetrator.
Okay, so Irvin's talking, McDaniel and Crawford are on the run. How long does that last?
Well, McDaniel and Crawford proved to be pretty slippery. They managed to evade capture for a whole year.
A full year.
Yeah. It wasn't until April 1920, a year after the murder, that they finally tracked down Henry McDaniel. He's way out in Casper, Wyoming.
And he comes back easily.
Not initially. He actually fought extradition for a bit, refused to waive it.
Yeah.
But the authorities eventually got him back to St. Joe to face charges.
Okay, so McDaniel is caught. Now the focus must shift back to Irvin, right? He's the key.
Absolutely critical. Irvin had already been charged with murder himself, but he was out on bail, a pretty hefty $10,000 bond.
Which suggests?
It strongly suggests the expectation was exactly what you'd think. He would turn state's evidence, testify against McDaniel.
But there's always a but in this case, it seems.
Right. So the trial for McDaniel is finally scheduled January 1921. Everything's ready to go.
Yeah.
And where's Vern Irvin, the star witness?
Gone.
Vanished. Jumped bail. He's nowhere to be found.
Oh, come on. So the state's case is about to collapse.
Pretty much. They had to halt the trial immediately, get a continuance. Their main witness had flown the coop.
That's dramatic. Did they find him again?
They did. It adds another layer of drama. They track him down later that same month, January 1921. He's working down in Collinsville, Illinois.
Doing what?
Working as a railway conductor, ironically, and under an alias B.E. Brown.
Wow. So he just tried to blend back into railway life somewhere else.
Seems like it. And when the Burlington Detective Force caught up with him, he admitted it. Said he jumped his bond because, frankly, he was terrified to stand trial.
Why? What was he afraid of?
His own words were telling. He knew that if he faced trial without McDaniel being there, or without a deal, he'd likely be stuck, meaning convicted.
So he only felt safe testifying if McDaniel was the main target.
That's certainly the implication. His testimony, unreliable as he might seem, was suddenly the linchpin again. They absolutely needed him to have any hope of convicting McDaniel.
And McDaniel himself, while all this is going on, he's just sitting quietly in jail.
Not exactly quiet.
Yeah.
Just to add to the pre-trial tension, weeks before Irvin was recaptured and the trial was reset, McDaniel got caught.
Caught doing what?
He and 2 other prisoners were caught trying to saw through a bar in the county jail bathroom window, trying to escape.
Shows his desperation, I guess. He knew Irvin's testimony, if they got him back, would be bad news.
Exactly. He could see the writing on the wall once Irvin was back in custody.
Okay, so after all that delay, the fugitive hunt, the runaway witness, we finally get to the trial. February 8th, 1921, Henry McDaniel is in the dock.
Finally. And there's an interesting legal point right off the bat. The prosecution couldn't ask for the death penalty.
Why not? It was murder.
Timing. The law in Missouri that reinstated capital punishment was actually enacted after Henry Moore was murdered. It didn't take effect until July 1919.
Ah, so it couldn't be applied retroactively.
Correct. So the maximum they could go for was life imprisonment. The stakes were life sentence or acquittal. Nothing in between.
And the whole thing really rested on Vern Irvin.
He was the state's star witness, the accomplice who ran, then got caught again.
And his testimony, was it straightforward? Did he just point the finger at McDaniel?
Not exactly straightforward. Irvin gets on the stand and, well, he tries to muddy the waters a bit. Even then,
How so?
he confirms he, McDaniel, and Crawford went to Armour. But then he claims they were actually heading to Atchison to sell whiskey.
Whiskey, not robbery.
That was his claim on the stand. Said they mistook Rushville for Armour Junction, got confused. It flew in the face of everything else, including Moore's dying words.
So the state knew he was probably lying about the motive, but they still used him.
They had to. They needed him to place McDaniel at the scene doing the actions. Irvin testified that they were about 60 yards away when McDaniel alone walked to the station, went inside.
And then the shot.
Then the shot. Irvin says McDaniel hurried back, carrying an automatic revolver, and even cautioned Irvin not to tell Crawford what happened.
So he directly implicates McDaniel in the shooting itself.
Yes, while simultaneously trying to downplay the original intent as not being robbery. It's a weird, self-serving mix.
And under cross-examination, did the defense tear him apart?
They certainly tried. And crucially, under cross-examination, Irvin basically admits why he disappeared and why he's testifying now. He says, quote, "Well, I knew that if I was tried without McDaniel being arrested, I would be stuck."
Wow. So he's essentially telling the jury, I'm testifying to save my own skin.
Pretty much a frank admission. My testimony is the price of my freedom. It's remarkable he said it so plainly.
So Irvin's testimony is shaky on motive, clearly self-serving. How did the prosecution bolster the case?
They brought in strong corroborating evidence. Powerful stuff. First, Dr. G.W. Ullman, who treated Moore.
What did he testify?
He testified about Henry Moore's dying declaration, made in the hospital when Moore knew he wouldn't survive.
And Moore said?
Moore confirmed the motive was robbery. And crucially, he said he was already on guard that night because he'd received a tip-off about a possible attempt.
Okay, that directly contradicts Irvin's whiskey-selling story and supports the robbery motive.
Exactly. Then you had the other man from the depot, W.S. Willis, the survivor.
What did Willis say?
Willis confirmed the sequence. He was shot at first through the door, then the man went to the window and shot Moore. He also identified Irvin as a man who briefly came into the office right after the shooting.
Irvin came back inside.
Momentarily. Willis said Irvin claimed to be a friend from a nearby camp, offered some brief help to Moore, and then fled again. It partially matches Irvin's own initial story, but puts him right there.
Okay. And was there anyone else, any outside witnesses?
Yes, and this was perhaps the most damaging independent evidence. A farmer, S.H. Brumley.
And he saw them fleeing.
He positively identified Henry McDaniel as one of 3 men he saw acting suspiciously and getting into a motor car near DeKalb the morning after the shooting.
So that puts McDaniel squarely in the escape route described earlier.
Absolutely. Ties him directly to the flight from the crime scene area.
So the defense, what could they even do against all that? Did they try an alibi?
They tried. They attempted to prove an alibi for McDaniel, and they tried to suggest maybe Irvin was the actual shooter. But clearly it just didn't convince the jury.
No. Especially with Moore's dying words, Willis's account, and the farmer's ID.
The combination, Irvin's core narrative placing McDaniel there, backed up by the physical evidence, the victim's statement, and the eyewitness to the getaway, was overwhelming.
And the verdict. This is the part that's always stood out.
It's stunning. After a 2-day trial, listening to all this, the jury goes out.
And they come back.
They come back in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes flat, guilty verdict. Life imprisonment for Henry McDaniel. It was apparently a record-breaking deliberation time, or lack thereof.
That's not deliberation. That's, like you said earlier, confirmation. They must have walked in, taken one pull, and walked out.
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about how clear-cut they found the evidence, or perhaps how much the community just wanted this resolved. Justice for the local soldier.
And McDaniel's reaction.
Reports say he was completely nonchalant, just smoked a cigarette calmly while the sentence was passed. Stoic, or maybe resigned.
So let's step back from the courtroom drama. What does this whole deep dive show us? We went from initial confusion and racist assumptions
Right, to a bizarre, quickly abandoned jealousy theory.
before finally landing back on robbery but needing the testimony of a very compromised fugitive accomplice to make it stick.
And that accomplice, Vern Irvin, literally ran away to avoid facing justice himself.
Okay, so what happened after the verdict? McDaniel goes to prison.
Immediately taken to the state penitentiary. His lawyers did file an appeal, unsurprisingly citing the jury's extreme haste, those 5 minutes, as evidence of prejudice, but it seems it didn't go anywhere.
And Vern Irvin, the star witness who cut the deal.
His case was, quote, continued indefinitely. He was released again, this time on a personal bond, no money down.
Which basically means
It signals pretty clearly he wasn't going to be prosecuted. His cooperation, however flawed, bought his freedom. He walked away despite admitting complicity.
and the third man, Herb Crawford.
Still at large, as far as the records show. The authorities never publicly stated what, if anything, they planned to do about him. He just kind of vanishes from the story.
So the path to justice for Henry Moore was incredibly messy. Took 2 years. Depended entirely on cutting a deal with a fugitive who arguably should have faced charges himself.
It absolutely was.
Hmm.
And that really leads us to the final thought, something for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
We have a community clearly desperate for justice for their murdered soldier. We have a state relying heavily on a witness, Irvin, who admitted his own complicity and only testified after being caught fleeing. And we have a jury that reached a life sentence verdict in 5 minutes.
So the question is,
What was the real cost of that swift justice in the end? Did the urgency to convict McDaniel, understandable as it was, effectively mean Vern Irvin got a pass? Did the community get justice for Moore against one man, but maybe sacrifice a full accounting for everyone involved?
yeah, did the truth pay a price for speed and certainty in this case?
That's the lingering question. Something to mull over.